Human history is filled with paradoxes, but perhaps none is more profound or ironic than the story of gunpowder. Born from a fervent quest for immortality, the Taoist alchemists of ancient China created not an elixir of life, but one of history's most potent forces of destruction. The creation of gunpowder and, subsequently, the gun was not a single invention, but an evolutionary process spanning centuries. It was a journey that began with accidental laboratory discoveries, progressed through early military experiments, and ultimately reshaped the face of global warfare forever. Today, we will analyze this complex and unexpected journey to understand how one of China's four great inventions was born and went on to change the world. Part 1. Alchemical Origins. Seeking Immortality. Finding Destruction. Our story begins not on the battlefield, but in the mystical alchemy labs of the Tang Dynasty 7th-9th centuries. The ultimate goal of the Taoist alchemists was to create a divine elixir, a potion that could grant eternal life. In their search for the perfect formula, they experimented with countless minerals and compounds, among them 3 fateful ingredients. 1. Saltpeter potassium nitrate, a type of salt known in traditional medicine for its cooling properties. 2. Sulfur, a yellow, flammable mineral believed to possess a powerful yang essence. 3. Charcoal, a common form of carbon used as fuel. The alchemists believed that by combining substances with different yin-yang properties in perfect proportion, they could achieve the ultimate balance and create the elixir of life. However, instead of balance, they created an extremely unstable mixture. Ancient texts record the accidents that occurred during these experiments. One mid-9th century text, the Zhenyuan Maya Dao Yaolu, gives a clear warning. Some have heated together sulfur, realgar, and saltpeter with honey. Smoke and flames result, so that their hands and faces have been burnt, and even the whole house where they were working burnt down. These are the first known descriptions of a controlled explosive reaction. The alchemists had failed to create the elixir of immortality, but they had succeeded in creating a fire drug, huoyao, a medicine with the power to erupt in violent flames. Initially, this discovery was seen as a dangerous byproduct, but before long, its military potential began to be recognized. Part 2. From fireworks to the fire lance, the weaponization of fire drug. Towards the end of the Tang Dynasty, and especially during the Song Dynasty 10th-13th centuries, a period marked by constant invasions from the north, the need for new weaponry became desperately urgent. The fire drug was taken from the laboratory to the battlefield. However, its initial applications were not for firing projectiles. The military focused on 3 primary uses. Incendiary weapons. Packets of gunpowder were attached to arrowheads, creating fire arrows, huoyao. When shot into enemy camps, they caused massive fires and chaos. Explosives. Gunpowder was packed into paper or bamboo casings to create early forms of grenades, known as caltrip fireballs, jili huoqiu. These were thrown by hand or launched from catapults and would release sharp shrapnel upon exploding. Psychological warfare. The loud bangs, bright flashes, and thick smoke from gunpowder were used to terrorize enemy soldiers and spook their cavalry horses. The true turning point, the most crucial link between gunpowder and the gun, was the invention of the fire lance, huoqiang. This weapon would define the very concept of a firearm. Its initial design was simple, a long spear with a bamboo or paper tube filled with gunpowder attached near the tip. When lit, this tube would erupt, spewing a jet of flame several meters forward. It was, in essence, a primitive flamethrower. Part 3. The birth of the gun. The leap from bamboo, tube to metal barrel. If the fire lance was the bridge connecting gunpowder to the gun, then the developments from the late 13th century onward were the destination. This was no longer a simple refinement. It was the birth of an entirely new class of weapon, a conceptual and technological leap that would lay the foundation for the entire history of firearms. This process was driven by the recognition and overcoming of the fire lance's inherent limitations. and it was made possible by advances in metallurgy. The conceptual shift, from spraying to firing. First, we must analyze the most critical shift in military thinking. The fire lance's primary function was as a close-range flamethrower, meant to burn and panic the enemy. The ejection of shrapnel was a secondary feature, inefficient and uncontrollable. The range of these projectiles was extremely short, and their lethality was unreliable. The military minds of the Song and Yuan dynasties realized that the true potential of gunpowder lay not in the flames it produced, but in the propulsive force it generated within a confined space. From this realization, a revolutionary question emerged. Why attach a flamethrower tube to a spear when we can create a dedicated weapon designed solely to harness that propulsive force? The concept of the weapon shifted. The goal was no longer a spear that could spray fire, but a tube that could fire a projectile over a great distance with lethal force. The spear was discarded. The tube itself now became the main event. This was the moment the idea of the gun was truly born. The metal barrel, the heart of the revolution. The idea was one thing, but making it a reality required a materials science breakthrough. The bamboo and paper tubes of the fire lance were completely inadequate for this new ambition. They were too weak, too brittle, and could only be used once before destroying themselves. The solution came from China's advanced metallurgical industry, the creation of a barrel made of metal, typically bronze or cast iron. The use of a metal barrel wasn't just a material swap. It revolutionized performance through three key factors. 1. Containing extreme pressure. This was the most important advantage. A cast bronze or iron barrel could withstand a much more powerful explosion than bamboo. This allowed soldiers to pack a larger charge of gunpowder into the chamber, generating immense gas pressure behind the projectile. In accordance with basic physics, higher pressure creates a stronger propulsive force, sending the projectile flying at a higher velocity with greater range and devastating penetrating power. 2. Achieving a perfect seal. A metal barrel could be cast with precision, creating an almost perfectly uniform cylindrical bore. When the projectile initially a round stone or metal ball was loaded, it fit snugly against the barrel walls. As a result, when the gunpowder ignited, nearly all the energy from the hot gas was directed into pushing the projectile forward, instead of leaking through cracks as it would in a bamboo tube. The energy efficiency was optimized. 3. Durability and reusability. A metal gun could be fired multiple times. Although the reloading process remained excruciatingly slow, the ability to reuse the weapon transformed it from a one-off consumable into a true battlefield weapon. However, operating such a weapon was a cumbersome and dangerous affair. It often required two people, one to aim and brace the heavy weapon, and another to use a fuse or a red-hot iron poker to ignite the powder through the touch hole. The resulting explosion produced a deafening roar, a thick cloud of vision-obscuring smoke, and a powerful recoil. Its accuracy at any significant distance was virtually non-existent. It was most effective when fired in volleys into massed enemy formations. Even so, for a heavily armored knight, who was the terror of the battlefield, a projectile from a hand cannon could easily pierce his defenses. Archaeological evidence and the parallel development of artillery. The most concrete proof of the gun's birth comes from archaeology. The Heilongjiang hand cannon, discovered in Manchuria and dated to around 1288, is a classic example. It is a bronze firearm with the complete anatomy of a hand cannon, proving that this technology was fully realized and in use by the Yuan military. Simultaneously, these same principles of metallurgy and gunpowder were being applied on a much larger scale to create artillery. The first cannons were essentially hand cannons, mounted on platforms and used to fire large stone balls to batter down city walls. The advent of artillery fundamentally changed the nature of siege warfare, which had previously relied on catapults and scaling ladders. In summary, the transition from bamboo to metal was not merely a material upgrade. It represented a cognitive leap, giving birth to an entirely new class of weaponry based on the principles of ballistics. Though crude, heavy, and inaccurate, China's first-hand cannons were the direct ancestors of all future firearms and artillery, opening a violent and transformative new chapter in global military history. Ladies and gentlemen, the creation of gunpowder and the gun by the ancient Chinese is an epic of technological evolution, a testament to how the greatest inventions often arise not from a set plan, but from curiosity, accident, and the pressures of circumstance. It began with a paradox: the search for eternal life creating a tool of death. It evolved slowly, from accidental fires to flame-throwing lances, and finally to projectile-firing weapons. This journey is a complex legacy, but it is undeniable that the spark accidentally unleashed by Chinese alchemists became one of the most powerful forces in history, shaping the narrative of conflict, conquest, and power for the last millennium.